Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. We finally have our first official look at the live-action Legend of Zelda movie that Nintendo is making with Sony. This is meant to build out their adaptation of several different major Nintendo video games and franchises after the success of the Super Mario Bros. Movie. We also just got the Super Mario Galaxy trailer, which is the sequel to that first movie. I already did a much longer Easter egg video for that, breaking it down, so I'll link it at the end of this. I believe that Nintendo and Miyamoto wanted the Zelda movie to be live action because they wanted a more serious Lord of the Rings vibe from Zelda as opposed to Mario, which doesn't really lend itself to live action nearly as well as the Zelda franchise does. Everybody remembers what happened with the last live action Super Mario Bros. Movie. I'm going to go ahead and pretend I did not see that Avia Rod is attached as a producer on this movie while I was doing research for it, and it is not Morbin time for the Zelda franchise. The funny thing about this is it's not the first time that Nintendo has done live-action Legend of Zelda. There have been a couple attempts in the past. There have been a couple live-action Zelda commercials, but never a full movie. They did have the animated Legend of Zelda series back in the day. I did watch a little bit of that when it was on TV back in the day because they had Captain N. They also had the Super Mario Bros. Super Show. There was just a lot of Nintendo TV shows happening around that same time.
Nice job, hero!
Hey, excuse me, princess.
Probably the closest they've gotten to doing live-action adaptations of their characters was the Slamfest 99 event that they held to promote Super Smash Bros. Back in the day, hiring real-life wrestlers to dress up as Nintendo characters and fight each other for real, which is currently lost media. So if you do have footage of that Slamfest 99 event, please let me know for science. Recently, Nintendo also filed trademarks for a number of other movies and franchises for its characters, like Donkey Kong, for instance, so they'll probably do a Donkey Kong Country movie at some point as well. All this footage from the Legend of Zelda movie does look very Lord of the Rings inspired. They're currently filming in New Zealand, where Peter Jackson filmed the Lord of the Rings movies. What you're looking at is Bo Braxton as Zelda in blue, like she wears in some of the games. Benjamin Evan Ainsworth as Link in his traditional green tunic from the games. He also has the Master Sword in this too. And I believe the internet has collectively decided that Deacon Lockman here is playing a younger, hotter version of Impa from the games. Notice her clothing looks more inspired by Hylian Guard armor, like all the other guards around here seem like they're Hylian Guards. We also know Ganon is meant to be the main villain of this first movie, but they haven't revealed who's playing him and what backstory they're going to use for him, because it does seem like they're going to be doing a bunch of different games rolled into this first movie. We will see which Ganon backstory they go with for this one. Currently, it's scheduled to be released May 7th, 2027, so they still have a ways to go, like they've just been early days filming here. As you can tell from the younger version of Impa, with the blue Zelda clothing, they're not adapting any single one game from the movie. They're doing the same thing that the Super Mario Bros. Movie did, starting with an origin story, doing an original story that references a bunch of different Zelda games. So there's probably going to be a little bit of Breath of the Wild, Age of Calamity, Tears of the Kingdom, Twilight Princess, Ocarina of Time, Link to the Past baked in there. The original official teaser that Nintendo released for the movie revealing the date with the Triforce also used the original theme song from the first Legend of Zelda game, so pretty easy to assume that some of the movie will borrow from that original story. You get the idea though. It seems like both Link and Zelda are in the middle of a quest, both have their adventure gear on them, and Zelda is meeting with Deacon Lockman's Impa, who checks her sword, not the Master Sword, obviously. Looks like there are a number of other Hylian guards around them here. You can see their crest on Zelda's horse, who seem like they're helping Zelda and Link. In the other video, we can see Link off by himself off to the side, putting on his cloak. The other person here is holding the Master Sword for him. Looks like it's got some markings on it for special effects references, so they'll tune it up with visual effects in post-production for some of the fights probably too. Zoom and enhance, notice there are two horses. They're meant to be Link's and Zelda's. A lot of people think that that means that this horse in the back is Link's because it looks a lot like Epona. She's actually named after a Celtic goddess, and the name Epos literally means horse, and Ona means on, as in on the horse. That's just Miyamoto humor in naming conventions, I guess, for the games. Deacon Lockman, you all know from Severance more recently. Like, she's been blowing it up real recently on that show, but she's been in a ton of other stuff before this. I have not watched any of Bo Braxton's other work before this. She's mostly known for Renegade Nell, The Radleys, Censor, and Three Girls, so like she's been in a bunch of stuff before this. You can see her hair will not be the traditional blonde Zelda from the games, though. She looks more brunette with blonde highlights. I have seen Benjamin Evan Ainsworth in Netflix's Sandman and The Haunting of Bly Manor. I have not seen any of his other work before this, but like he was also just in Everything's Going to Be Great with Bryan Cranston, so he has also done a bunch of stuff before this as well.
No one gets me.
You're a weirdo. It's not their fault.
You don't really get a sense for what the characters are going to be like in the scenes that we actually see them filming here. So hopefully as they continue to film, we'll get more scenes with them together, more intimate, so we'll actually get a sense for their characters. Throughout all the games, Hylians are meant to be the major dominant race of Hyrule. Zelda is their current princess. Link is also Hylian. They're meant to be an elf-like race who serve the goddess Hylia. The games have a very twisty timeline. Sometimes the Link and Zelda of each game are the same versions from previous games, just building on the events of the previous games. And then sometimes, some of the newer games, for instance, the timeline gets more complicated, and they're meant to be different versions from a different time period than the previous games. There's a lot of reincarnation that bakes into it. I believe that Nintendo is going to simplify all this for the movies, so like your casual fans who haven't played all the games can just walk into a theater and they'll follow the same groups of characters across all the sequels, assuming that the movies do well enough to merit more sequels. Maybe there'll be some Ocarina of Time style time travel subplot going on in the movies at some point, but for the most part we'll just be following the same groups of characters across their shared timeline. Like I said, the vibe from the footage that we see here implies a more linear story, Lord of the Rings style. Ganon tries to steal the Triforce and use it to obtain ultimate power in the same way that Bowser in the first Super Mario Bros. Movie was trying to get the Superstar to attain ultimate power. What it seems like is different in this movie from especially the earlier Zelda games is that Zelda seems much more of a participant and a partner with Link on their adventure. So I'm assuming that this movie isn't just as simple as Ganon kidnapping Zelda, with Link trying to collect the different pieces of the Triforce of Wisdom, then defeating Ganon to save her. Like, it'll be a much broader story than that. My early theory is that during the movie, he's able to get pieces of the Triforce, Ganon is, and by the third act, at some point, he almost gets the final piece, or maybe if they do get more twisty with it, he does get the final piece briefly, and things go dark if they're doing an Ocarina of Time style time travel story. Pretty easy to assume there's going to be a lot of dungeon crawling, probably a number of other major characters from different Zelda games across the franchise. The real question here is if they're doing a linear Zelda timeline through all the movies, is how quickly they're going to move through the events of all the games. Both of the Super Mario Bros. Movies more recently are a good example of this. They started with the origin story in the first Mario Bros. Movie, but then instead of them doing Super Mario World as the second movie, like expanding the story with a future game after that, they jumped straight to Super Mario Galaxy later in the franchise with some Super Mario Odyssey and other Mario games in there to boot.
It's trash.
So I'm kind of expecting something similar from the new line of Zelda movies here, assuming that the first one does well enough that they greenlight more sequels. When you really think about it, the Mario movies are all individually probably going to make over $1 billion each of them, so at worst, Nintendo will just see that as justification to keep funding the other different franchises that they adapt into movies. One super video game franchise to fund all their other video game franchise movies. Just another license for Nintendo to print money. The Switch and the Switch 2 have already kind of been licenses to print money for many years now. The movies, just adapting their stuff into movies, is the next step in that chain. Piles and piles of money. Everybody post all your reactions to the footage in the comments below, and let me know how you think they'll handle Link and Zelda if they're doing them in live action here, but they eventually want to do an Avengers-style Super Smash Bros. Crossover movie once they have 4 or 5 other different franchises adapted into movies. Like, it's way too early right now. They need at least like 4 or 5 other different games adapted before they could do a Smash Bros. Crossover. My assumption in that case is they would either do a Spider-Verse situation where some of it's live action blended with animation, or they would just do it all in animation, like they would just do animated Link and animated Zelda for that crossover movie. Also because the Super Mario Galaxy movie just canonized the idea of there being different worlds that they could travel to, different universes, different galaxies, they'll probably just treat the live action Zelda movies as a different universe, a different galaxy in that franchise. This also gave us a good opportunity to revisit those old Zelda games. Super Nintendo was my first actual system that I owned, but I didn't play a whole lot of Link to the Past because I was so young at the time. Ocarina of Time was like the first Zelda game that I really leaned in on. That's another good question too. Everybody let me know in the comments, what was your first Zelda game that you remember playing? Just to explain the Avia Rod jump scare from earlier in the video, if you didn't realize, Sony is also producing this movie, not Illumination, which is one of the other reasons why it's live action and not animation. My assumption is the reason that Avia Rod is attached as a producer is because his production company somehow got the rights to a Zelda movie a long time ago, and he just carried on through that. Because I think if Miyamoto and Nintendo had their choice of who they wanted to make the movie, they would have gone to somebody else to do it. Seriously though, Nintendo is so litigious and so hardcore about their IP, I don't think that they would let a stinker get out if they thought a movie was going to be bad.
Excuse me, Princess.
Just because it's early days of them filming this stuff right here, we'll probably see more footage like this over the next couple of months. They'll probably release a more official trailer sometime next summer, around the time that the Super Mario Galaxy movie winds up coming out. Nintendo really likes that kind of synergy where like they'll use one of their franchises to promote one of their other big franchises, so it just makes sense that we see more Zelda stuff when the Mario movie is coming out next year. I just did a much longer, more detailed Easter egg video for that Super Mario Galaxy trailer. Click here for that, and click here for my Stranger Things Season 5 trailer videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.